So we got a chance to stop in here today at CrossFit Jaboom after a quick little jaunt around on the mountain bike. And Kelly and I have been talking, and I know I deal with a lot of bigger guys, some stiff dudes from powerlifting, and we're going to go through a couple quick mobility tips that maybe scaled down a little bit just to get you started and start you getting into moving a little bit better.
Well, because we have like leopards, and we have elephant leopards, right? Well, so we found out that we were seeing a population of athletes and some of the traditional soft tissue work things that we were doing for moms and dads and physical, it didn't work, didn't translate at all. So we had to come up with a whole new language. Then enter my powerlifter, world champion, Olympic lifter, super gristly friends, and I had to come up with another set of languages that, because you're just, the mass is big, the stiffness, and some of the things that we take for granted about shapes, we can't even initiate that conversation. Right. What I like to say is that it's like if there's a bow, we can push against that, and it's going to support it. It's not until we get to the other side we're going to make some change. And so we've got to get these athletes to the other side. So otherwise, you're just bouncing off that stiff tissue, and you're never going to get change done, right? Like, I mean, the 10-minute squat test.
Yes.
Guys are like, okay, I'm there, I'm good, right?
And go.
And you're not even wearing briefs. Those are your briefs. They're built in. So let's talk about things. One is, sometimes we see is that when guys are on the ground, that's immediate no-go. We're in such compromised positions that we can't spend a lot of time in there, and we can't kind of make enough change. The first idea is, when we're addressing the joint capsule, we're always thinking of tissue systems. When we're addressing the joint capsule, if we can put a band on it, we put a band on it. If you can get some distraction in the joint, it's going to take a couple 100 pounds of pressure to make some change. And what we found is that if we're not addressing that capsular system first, that can account for upwards of 50% of the tissue restriction on our athletes. So let's start there. So the easiest and first one we're seeing is, most of our strength athletes are spending time doing some kind of pulling.
Sure.
And cleaning up the hip range of motion is the crucial part. And you'll see the mat kind of tops out about 90 degrees. And I like to have about, without a whole bunch of compensation, about 140 degrees. So standing cold, the legs should go up, and then it should go up, and it should go up. And that's normal range without doing a bunch of hip hiking, right?
Right.
Because what happens is we're short here. As soon as I start to end up hitting that 90-degree mark, I'm going to start reversing my upper back. And now I'm going to start to see that low back round. And then we get the shark fins along the spine. So one of the things we can do easily is just start by, set that into your hip there for me. And face the camera. There you go. Just hook it up high into your grundledge. Around that. And then run that out until you feel like it's going to be dangerous. Perfect. So now, if you had this, what would Louis say? This about 200-pound band?
Yeah.
About 200-pound band. Look, this is a big stretch of this thing. And what's going to happen now is Matt can literally have this band pull his hip back. So let's clean up his foot, get your foot straight, and then just imagine doing some good mornings against that. Hip hinge as far as you can. And then at the top, see if you can bring your butt through, squeeze your butt at the top. I know it's a little weird, but just fold over. And what's going to happen now is that we've got the band pulling the hip into a good position. And this is now we can start a conversation about improving that hip hinge. Now watch this. Bend your knee for me. Oh, and then straighten your leg. So we can do the same thing. We can head from bicycle to two sides. I can do kind of a good morning here, but because I can also put a slight bend in the knee and also do that flossing. Now I've got loaded into the hip. I'm in a weight-bearing position. This isn't like me on the ground waving my leg around. This is actually mobilizing an active position of restriction with the hip in weight-bearing, and it's actually going to make the most change. So that is a massive. Now, you just did that for a minute or so, and I know this is this lit-up calf.
Yes.
I lit up this calf also heavy carries up some stairs. But go ahead and just pick that knee up to your chest. Better, same, worse?
It's better.
It's better.
Yeah.
And so what we want to do is we want to think of this as like a credit card. Or bending the credit card, putting a crease in it, and then we're going to keep getting that crease, and then we can work it. So the big thing we see is that big guys are not doing any of this, right? And we need to start thinking, I'm going to do a little bit every day, right? So that's the first start. If you can put a band on, put a band on. So check this out. If you've got a rack at the top, one of the other things we do is just hang yourself in that, correct? And now, with the torso upright, just take a lunge position. Because one of the things that we're seeing is a lot of our guys aren't spending any time in a lunge shape. I know the strength athletes, maybe they're doing some step-ups, right? Or not. or maybe they're doing a lot of jerking or not. So we're not seeing that this pattern is represented, being able to open the hip. What's nice about having the band support you is that you can get this hip in extension, and then you can just kind of lunge in and out of position here, go as far as you're comfortable. Just go ahead and stay on the ground now, point that foot behind you, and then just imagine trying to take yourself into a little bit of a splits. And now you don't have to worry about keeping the torso upright, and you can just hang out. Now what's great about the band supporting you is you can just float around and kind of get a good, even stand up for me, take a wide sumo stance, really wide, and then just squat down and start playing with your hips into some different corners. Because the band is taking the weight of the, you can basically start to find some shapes that feel gristly. And if this isn't high enough, we can make it a little higher, we can support even more weight. But what ends up happening now is, the idea is we're going to really be able to keep the torso upright, and then you can start playing in and out of the hip range. Yeah, you feel that?
Oh, yeah.
And it's really a different stimulus than you trying to do this without being supported. So I call this the splits machine, because you can start to find corners that work. And again, we're in a standing position. We get you kind of ferreting out where you find your tight. And the idea is not a single static end range, but to try to touch, come out, touch, come out. We want to worry the tissues, get like 50 reps of touching your hip in a certain direction, right? And this is going to start a conversation about sort of opening up the hip, especially in extension. We'll come back to over here. The easiest iteration if we look at like most of the powerlifting, most of the positions, it's some iteration of bottom end squatting.
Right.
Right? That is the language. The first language anyway. And one of the things that we're seeing is, are you spending time in that bottom position? So most of the athletes, I was telling Mark Bell, I was like, when we started working together, I was like, hey look, you are literally spending 0.2 seconds every squat at the bottom, and you have gear on, right? And so you're not really there. And then you're never there the rest of your life. You get out of the bed, you sit on the toilet, you sit in the car, and so what ends up happening is you're never in that end range. No wonder we're always struggling for depth, right? So one of the easiest ways is, of course, just squatting, but that is tough for our big guys. Putting the foot up on a bench, suddenly now I'm doing a single leg squat at a time. When we have other athletes who have a little bit more range, we can spend some time on the ground in this shape.
Right.
But now suddenly, look at that. Hip creases below the knee, right? That is deep. That's deep, deep squatting. And now what we can do is in this shape, you can shove that knee out, put your hand around your foot, you can shove that knee out, you can make some circles in that hip. Minimum dose, we're going to spend 2 minutes. Spend some time. If you're milking it, go 5 minutes. Doesn't matter as long as you get some range. So first position is foot straight, knee out, and then try to do this for me. See if you can shift your weight over to the middle of the foot. So you're going to shift your body to the right a little bit more. There you go. So that's bringing that foot to midline, and it's forcing that knee into a little more extra rotation. If you have lateral problems on the knee, this should be stable enough. Feel okay on your knee? Yeah. Should feel stable enough in this shape. And what I can start doing now is run around in the corners and start to feel where that feels gristly. Now check this out. Just hand on the box, hand on your knee. Try to push your knee away from you like it disgusts you. You're going to break up with that knee. And all of a sudden you're going to find corners that you had no idea. You made that face. That's -2. Zen face. Zen face. Is that the hate face?
I live with the suffer face constantly.
The hate face. Get in there. Get back in there. So we're going to move around. Right? Look away. Try to move your body away. Actually look away from the knee in that shape. And then just, again, little oscillations. I want you to constantly be moving in and out. And that is part of that short hip rotator that is just a big mess. Now check this out. See if you can bring that foot to middle and just let it drop on its edge a little bit. Right? And now that completely changes the stimulus a little bit. You don't have to collapse down. We're not doing pigeon pose. And in this shape, I can, again, start to scout around. I can look into that corner. I can look away. And what I'm doing is I'm spending the two kind of components of the bottom position of the squat, which is end range of hip flexion with a high action rotation torque. And so spending time in this shape, that's well hip crease below the knees. Just pop out of that real quick and just see what happens. So let's just watch you squat down.
It's not going to work with the calf.
Just squat a little bit. Better saying worse. Do you notice one side? Does it feel more open?
It's more than it was when we walked in, but
there we go.
This thing is basically concrete.
So we'll do this now. Pick that knee up to your chest. and see what happens. Whoa, that's different. And that's the key here, is that we're thinking about, we sometimes get down the rabbit hole of, is this sartorius involvement, or what is the distal insertion of the pectineus, and that's all crap. All those tissues are going to load up as we see them, and in the shape of the movement. So what we need to think is, what's the bottomest range of the movement, what's the toppest range of the movement, right?
Right.
And if I'm spending time in those shapes. Now, the finish, of course, is, come on over here. Basic mobility for big guys is, let's grab a kettlebell. I'm going to choose the one that says easy day. Easy day, right here.
Easy day.
Easy day, right? You could do this sitting, but you lean up against the wall.
Oh, look at
right?
your own.
Yeah, get your own. I see you do this. You lean up against the wall.
Yeah.
So we take that load out, so you're not struggling for position.
Right.
Right. You can relax, and then you start working that kettlebell around your quads, and you just roll back and forth. And this is an easy way. What we have found, and we talk about a lot, is it's difficult. You get on your stomach,
right,
and get enough pressure into some of these tissues.
Or even if I am, the quads are still going to be kind of active, and I'm never really going to be able to sink in.
Look, if we have a block of ice, and we're going to cut that block of ice, you just hang a weight on a wire, and pretty soon it's going to cut through that ice. And what's nice about the load is that even if you're flexing a little bit, you're going to stop flexing eventually, and it's going to win. So let it win. Couple ideas about soft tissue work: shouldn't hurt. If it hurts at all, it's not normal. That's telling you you should be there. So if your quads are stiff at all, and you've got some pressure on there, and you're not digging it, that's a good sign that you need help in that area. So that's easy. 2.
So what you don't mean, if it's pain, it doesn't mean stop.
No. So watch, you take it off, does it stop?
Yes.
Then it's normal.
Okay.
But what I'm telling you is that if you put a tissue under compression and it's uncomfortable, that's an indicator that the tissue's not normal. It's stiff and gristly. So let's start a conversation about that. If you stop breathing, you're like, it's good, I got this all day. Then that also is an indicator that you're not clear. So start working on smashing some of these tissues. And you saw it, you took the handle up, you were able to get right up in the hip crease there, right into that TFL, right into that kind of high rectus femoris. Very simple. Pulling the leg in gets you access to the adductonators. It's so bad. You can flip the handle over, get right up in the gristly part of your groin. It's, really finding areas that are difficult. What's nice is we find that we save the soft tissue work for when we're done, because it's one of the ways that we can pull us down out of the high intensity, sort of big, sympathetic nervous system drive. This is a way of coming down. You're also warmed up, so it's a good time to make change. And I don't think this is a good way to get ready for lifting heavy weights.
No, I disagree. I agree with you completely. I've been doing, the banded distraction stuff, pre-workout and post-workout, sticking to my mobility balls and my roller and doing this.
If my job was, or my hobby was about squatting heavy things and picking things up off the ground dynamically, the positions I would obsess about would be bottom position of my squat and a really excellent high hip hinge. Like, for example, and we can do this again. I've seen our video, we can put it up, but you should be able to basically perform a stiff-legged deadlift without any changes in your back to a barbell. That tells me that you've got enough hip function. And that might be hamstring stiffness, posterior. Most of the time I see it as hip capsule.
Okay.
Right? So, but that tells us that, hey, still have, because, when you're lifting, some of the places where I see improvement is that you're obviously strong in that bottom position, but your upper back gets soft.
Right.
And then to compensate for the lift, and that means that we've closed off some of the options of translating back into overhead, especially movements like snatching or throwing. So I'm picking something up off the ground and round it back. At some point, I'm going to have to fix that before I go overhead. So if again, for the big guys, making my money about hip hinging and end range hip hinging and end range of the bottom position squat, that language plus a little bit of smashing, man, that's a game changer.
Awesome. I'm glad that stuff's been really helpful for me, and I just wanted to get another input, to, I guess, better explain it with some more science and knowledge than the less of that I have. These fine words.
I mean, should you be able to middle splits, even if you're a big guy? It's true. You should be able to do some good old-fashioned middle splits, right? That's what it should look like, cold. But the problem is we've been training so hard for so long, and we haven't been doing it right, and we get stiff, and then that stiffness builds on stiffness, and you start making kind of compensations you're not even aware of, and then you end up in a problem. So, you know, the bottom line is elevate yourself up. That's the way to start. Put a band on it. Do it in weight bearing. You'll be shocked at how much better you get.
Man, I appreciate the help.
My pleasure.
Guys, enjoy.